The year was 2157, when humanity finally cracked the code of faster-than-light travel. Dr. Ellie Martinez stood in the control room of the Kennedy Space Center, her eyes fixed on the monitor as the test vessel Pathfinder disappeared in a flash of blue light, only to reappear 3 seconds later 20 million miles away. The room erupted in cheers. Humanity had taken its first step into the vast ocean of stars. What they didn't expect was that someone would be waiting for them. Just 6 weeks after the successful test, strange signals appeared on deep space monitoring stations around the world. At first, governments kept it secret, but when the massive ship appeared in lunar orbit, there was no hiding it anymore. The vessel was unlike anything humans had built, sleek, seemingly made of flowing metal, and large enough to cast a shadow on the lunar surface visible from Earth. "They're hailing us on all frequencies," said Communications Officer Ryan Clark at Space Command Headquarters. General Patricia Winters leaned forward, her face tense but composed. "Put it through," she ordered. The face that appeared on screen wasn't what anyone expected. The alien had purple-tinted skin with small ridges that formed patterns across its forehead. Its eyes were large and entirely black, but somehow conveyed a sense of age and wisdom. "People of Earth," it spoke in perfect English, having apparently studied human broadcasts. "I am Zixtar, diplomatic envoy of the Galactic Senate. Your achievement of faster-than-light travel has qualified your species for contact. We welcome you to the greater community of stars." Within days, Ambassador Diane Powell and Admiral Frank Nelson were selected to represent Earth at a formal meeting with Senate representatives. The meeting was set on neutral ground, a space station quickly assembled in Earth orbit by the visitors, demonstrating technology centuries beyond humanity's capabilities. Ambassador Powell smoothed her jacket as she prepared to enter the meeting chamber. "Remember," she whispered to Admiral Nelson, "we represent all of Earth now. Every nation, every person." Nelson nodded grimly. A career military man, he wasn't convinced this was the blessing everyone seemed to think it was. "Just keep your eyes open," he replied quietly. The chamber they entered was filled with beings from a dozen different worlds. Some looked almost human, while others defied easy description. At the center stood Counselor Zixtar, who spread his four-fingered hands in a welcoming gesture. "The Senate recognizes Earth and its representatives," Zixtar announced. "Today marks the beginning of your world's inclusion in a civilization that spans over 300 species across 2,000 star systems." Powell stepped forward. "We are honored by this welcome and eager to learn from your wisdom." The formal ceremony continued for hours as Senate protocols were explained. Earth would be granted probationary membership, with access to certain trade routes and cultural exchanges. They would learn about Senate law and eventually, perhaps in a decade, be eligible for full membership. What the Earth representatives didn't see was the private meeting that followed after they returned to their quarters. They developed faster-than-light travel only 2 centuries after discovering electricity, said a tall, insect-like being named Krexval. "This is unprecedented and concerning." Zixtar nodded slowly. "Their history is troubling as well. They have spent most of their recorded time fighting amongst themselves." The Vorjan Empire had similar traits, noted High Commander Ulter, a reptilian being whose scales gleamed under the chamber lights. "They nearly destroyed us all before the Senate intervened." "We should proceed carefully," Zixtar advised. "Grant them limited access. Observe. Guide them toward proper civilization, away from their warlike tendencies." Ulter's vertical pupils narrowed. "And if they resist guidance?" Humans achieved in 200 years what took most species millennia. They are dangerously innovative. "Then we have protocols for that too," Zixtar said softly. "As we have always had." Back on Earth, celebrations continued as humanity looked toward the stars with new hope. In schools and homes around the world, children learned about their new galactic neighbors. New opportunities, new technologies, new futures awaited. None suspected the watchful, wary eyes that now monitored their every move. 3 years passed since Earth joined the galactic community. Humans now travel to nearby star systems under Senate guidance. Trade brought new materials and technologies. Most people believed this was the start of a golden age. Naval Intelligence Officer Laura Bennett didn't share this optimism. She sat alone in her small office at the United Earth Space Command headquarters in Geneva, staring at strange patterns on her screen. For 6 months, she had monitored Senate communications. Something about their transmissions never felt right to her. "You're still here?" Commander Greg Daniels asked, leaning against her doorway. He held 2 cups of coffee and offered one to her. "Thanks," she said, taking the cup. "And yes, I'm still here. These Senate transmissions have hidden data packets embedded in them. I just know it." Greg sat across from her desk. "Laura, maybe you're seeing problems where there aren't any. The Senate has been nothing but helpful." Laura shook her head. "Too helpful. They give us just enough technology to make us dependent on them, but never enough to truly advance on our own." She turned her screen toward him. "Look at these signal patterns. There's secondary data hidden beneath the official communications. I've been using an algorithm based on quantum fluctuations to try to decode it." Greg leaned forward, his interest piqued despite his skepticism. "Have you made any progress?" Laura tapped a key, and a new window opened. "Only fragments so far. But what I've found isn't good." The screen showed partial translations. Humans advancing too quickly. Military capabilities concerning. Need to implement Protocol 7. Soon. "What's Protocol 7A?" Greg asked. "I don't know yet," Laura said, "but I found references to other species in the Senate archives. The Tellarians, the Juxta Coalition, both were described as aggressive species when they first joined. Both are now completely dependent on Senate protection. Neither has a military to speak of anymore." Greg's face grew serious. "You think that's their plan for us?" Laura nodded. "I need access to more secure Senate communications to be sure. But I think all these security treaties they keep proposing are designed to gradually weaken us." For the next 2 weeks, Greg helped Laura access more Senate transmissions. They worked through nights, building better decryption tools. Finally, on a quiet Sunday morning, they broke through. "I've got it," Laura said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The full communication between Senate High Command and the diplomatic court here on Earth." They read in silence. The truth was worse than they had imagined. The Senate feared humanity's unpredictable nature and combat aptitude. Senate analysts had studied Earth's history of warfare and innovation with growing alarm. The diplomatic mission wasn't about friendship. It was about containment. Protocol 7A. Greg read aloud. "Gradual disarmament through diplomatic pressure, followed by technological dependence and eventual protectorate status." He looked up at Laura. "They've done this before." Laura scrolled through more data, at least 7 times with other species. "They call us potentially destabilizing to galactic harmony because we adapt too quickly and think too independently." Greg stood up and paced the small office. "We need to take this to someone with authority. This goes beyond our department." Laura nodded. "Ambassador Peter Calloway. He's the new head of Earth's diplomatic corps. He has direct access to the President and the Joint Chiefs." "Can we trust him?" Greg asked. "We have to trust someone," Laura replied. And Calloway has always been skeptical about giving up too much to the Senate. His background was in security before diplomacy. They compiled their evidence onto a secure data drive. As they prepared to leave, Laura paused at her door. "If we're right about this, everything changes," she said quietly. "This isn't about making friends anymore. This is about Earth's survival as an independent world." Greg nodded grimly. "Let's go find Calloway." Neither of them noticed the small drone outside Laura's window, a gift from the Senate to help with environmental monitoring. Its sensors recorded everything, transmitting data to a receiver far above Earth's atmosphere. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Senate was a massive dome with seating for representatives from over 300 worlds. Today marked Earth's 5th year in the galactic community, and every seat was filled. Floating platforms carried smaller alien species to their designated areas, while larger beings occupied specially designed spaces near the bottom level. Ambassador Peter Calloway sat with the Earth delegation, his face calm despite the storm brewing inside him. Beside him sat his aide, Jason Miller, who leaned over to whisper, "They've added extra security today. Something big is coming." Calloway nodded slightly. In the months since Laura Bennett and Greg Daniels had brought him their evidence, he had maintained a perfect facade of cooperation with the Senate while secretly preparing Earth's response. President Samantha Miller had been briefed, and global leaders had met in secret sessions to form a united front. The lights dimmed, and Grand Counselor Vex Moore floated to the central podium. Unlike many Senate species, the Vex had no solid form. They existed as swirling clouds of bioluminescent particles contained within special environmental suits. This one glowed with deep purple and blue lights that pulsed as it spoke. "Esteemed representatives," Vex Moore began, its voice translated through speakers. "Today we celebrate 5 years of humanity's inclusion in our peaceful community. Earth has shown great promise as a developing world." Polite applause rippled through the chamber. As is customary with promising new species, the Senate wishes to extend special protections to ensure Earth's continued prosperity and security. Calloway felt his muscles tense. Here it came. "Our prosperity proposal offers Earth unprecedented benefits," Vex Moore continued. "Advanced medical technology, expanded trade routes, and most importantly, the protection of the Senate's peacekeeping forces." Holograms appeared around the chamber showing sleek Senate vessels and weapons systems. In exchange, Earth need only make a few reasonable adjustments to its own military structure. The hologram shifted to show Earth's defense systems with red highlights marking 90% of its fleet and weapons platforms. These outdated systems would be decommissioned under Senate supervision. Senate peacekeepers would assume protection duties for Earth's interests throughout space. Additionally, human expansion would be limited to 5 solar systems to ensure proper oversight and protection. Whispers spread through the chamber as Vex Moore continued listing the benefits of the proposal. Calloway maintained his neutral expression, even as rage built inside him. The proposal was exactly what Bennett had warned about, not just disarmament but complete surrender of Earth's independence. To help Earth transition smoothly, Vex Moore concluded, Senate inspection teams would require access to all Earth defense installations. This prosperity proposal would begin implementation in 60 standard days, after which Earth would enjoy full protection status. The unspoken threat was clear. Accept these terms or face sanctions and expulsion from galactic trade networks. Several other species had faced similar ultimatums in the past. None had successfully resisted. As the session ended, representatives from various worlds approached the Earth delegation. Some offered sympathy, disguised as congratulations. Others, particularly the younger species, watched with concerned eyes, knowing they might face similar proposals soon. Back on Earth, President Samantha Miller sat in the Oval Office watching the transmission from the Senate. Around her stood the Joint Chiefs of Staff and leaders of the world's major powers. "They finally showed their hand," she said as the screen went dark. General Alan Rodriguez, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, stepped forward. "Madam President, if we submit to these terms, Earth will never again determine its own destiny." "I have no intention of submitting, General," Miller replied firmly. "How long will our preparations take?" "Project Silent Shield is at 70% completion," Rodriguez answered. "We need more time." President Miller stood, her face resolute. "Then we'll buy time. I'm appointing a special task force to handle this crisis." She turned to her Chief of Staff. "Get me Colonel Alicia Montgomery and Daniel Harris. They'll lead our response." As the officials filed out, the President looked at the night sky through her window. The stars no longer seemed welcoming, but instead filled with hidden dangers. Earth would need all its strength and cunning for what was coming. "They think we're just another species to control," she whispered. They have no idea what humans are capable of when cornered. Colonel Alicia Montgomery stood at the window of the underground command center, watching technicians work on equipment that didn't officially exist. Tall with short gray hair, she had spent 30 years in military intelligence before being called to lead this critical mission. "The Senate representatives are getting impatient," said Daniel Harris as he entered the room. A former diplomat with a talent for negotiation, Harris had been working directly with the Senate delegation. They expected an immediate acceptance of their proposal. Montgomery turned from the window. "Then we're doing something right. Have they accepted our request for the implementation planning period?" Harris nodded. Reluctantly, "I convinced them that dismantling our defense systems is complex and requires careful planning to avoid accidents. They granted us 1 year to create an implementation schedule." 1 year, Montgomery repeated. "Not as much time as we hoped, but it will have to be enough." She pressed a button on her desk, and a holographic display appeared showing the solar system. Red dots indicated known Senate monitoring stations. Blue dots showed Earth's official military installations, but there were also green dots, hundreds of them, scattered throughout the system in apparently random patterns. "Project Silent Shield," Montgomery explained. "Autonomous defense platforms disguised as research stations, communication relays, or mining operations. The Senate knows about our official military assets, but these are invisible to their scans." Harris studied the display with concern. "Will they be enough if the Senate decides to use force?" Montgomery shook her head. "Not by themselves, but they're just part of our strategy." She tapped another control, and the display zoomed out to show nearby star systems. Small yellow dots appeared in several locations. "We've been quietly sending unmanned probes to map Senate installations beyond our system." "Knowledge is power, Daniel." "And what about our friends?" Harris asked. Montgomery smiled slightly. "You've done excellent work there. How many species have expressed support?" 17 so far, Harris replied. "All newer members of the Senate who resent the elder species control. They can't help openly, but they've shared valuable intelligence about Senate military capabilities." On Mars Colony, engineer Kyle Jackson worked in a pressurized lab deep below the surface. The red glow of emergency lighting made the room feel even more isolated than it was. Jackson hadn't seen sunlight in 3 months, but the work was too important to risk regular communication with the surface. He carefully adjusted controls on a device that looked like a small satellite dish. The air around it shimmered strangely, distorting light. "Power levels stable at 87%, said his assistant, Maria Vasquez. "Field integrity is holding." Jackson nodded, his expression serious but satisfied. "Run the weapons test." Maria activated a small laser pointed at the device. The beam hit the shimmering field and completely disappeared. "Energy absorption at 100%, she reported. "No bleed-through." "Now for the redirect test," Jackson said. Maria entered commands, and the field around the device pulsed. Suddenly, the laser beam shot out from the field in a completely different direction, hitting a target on the far wall. Jackson smiled for the first time in weeks. "It works. The shield doesn't just block energy weapons, it can capture and redirect them." "The Senate has no idea this technology exists," Maria said. "Their weapons will be useless against it. And that's exactly how we need to keep it," Jackson replied. "Not a word about this leaves this room. As far as the Senate knows, we're developing improved mining techniques." Back in Washington, President Miller met with Montgomery and Harris in the White House Situation Room. The atmosphere was tense as they reviewed progress reports from around the world. "The Senate is watching us closely," Miller said. "Their ships have been conducting friendship patrols near Jupiter. We believe they're scanning for unusual activity." "Let them look," Montgomery replied. "Everything they can see is exactly what we want them to see, a planet reluctantly preparing for disarmament." "And everything else?" the president asked. Montgomery's expression hardened. "Is precisely what they'll never see coming." Harris looked between them. The Senate has subjugated dozens of species over thousands of years. They're confident in their methods. That's their weakness, Miller said quietly. They think they know exactly what we'll do. They've never faced humans before. 6 months into the implementation planning period, a massive fleet of Senate vessels arrived in the solar system. 30 ships, each larger than anything humans had built, took positions around Jupiter. Their silver hulls gleamed in the sunlight as they formed a perfect circle around the gas giant. Admiral Kurzeth stood on the bridge of the flagship, his scaled skin reflecting the blue light of the control panels. A member of the Draxian species, he had led 3 previous missions to ensure compliance from species that resisted Senate control. All had ended with those species disarmed and properly subdued. "Send the message to Earth," he ordered. "Inform them that we have arrived as a gesture of friendship and protection during their transition period." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Venn, bowed slightly. "The humans have been asking for more time, Admiral. They claim their planning process is complex." Kurzeth made a sound that might have been a laugh. "They all ask for more time. It changes nothing. Begin scanning their installations throughout the system. I want to know everything they're doing." On Earth, warning systems blared as the Senate fleet began powerful scans that penetrated even hardened military facilities. At Space Command Headquarters, General Andrew Wilson watched as classified data was stripped from secure servers by the invasive scans. "They're not even pretending anymore," he said to Colonel Montgomery, who had just rushed into the command center. "These scans violate at least 6 provisions of our treaty with the Senate." Montgomery nodded grimly. "They're getting impatient. Has Silent Shield been compromised?" The general shook his head. "No. The decoy systems are feeding them exactly what we want them to see. The real network remains undetected." "What about our people on Europa?" Montgomery asked. Before Wilson could answer, a lieutenant called out from a monitoring station. "Sir," energy spiked from one of the Senate vessels. "They've activated weapons systems." All eyes turned to the main screen as a beam of energy lanced from one of the Senate ships toward Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. The beam struck a small research station on the surface. In seconds, the station was vaporized, leaving only a smoking crater in the ice. Silence fell over the command center. 47 scientists had been stationed there, studying Europa's subsurface ocean. "Get me the president," General Wilson said quietly, his voice tight with controlled rage. The Senate's response came 3 hours later. Admiral Kurzeth expressed deep regret for the unfortunate accident and offered compensation for the minimal loss of life. He explained that a system malfunction had caused the weapon's discharge and assured Earth that such an incident would not happen again. President Miller addressed the world that evening. Her face was composed, but anger flashed in her eyes as she spoke. "Today we witnessed the true nature of Senate protection," she said. 47 of our brightest minds were killed in what they call an accident. The Senate has offered compensation and apologies, as if lives can be measured in credits. She paused, letting her words sink in. "I have been in communication with leaders around the world. We are united in our response. While we will continue diplomatic efforts, I have authorized immediate activation of enhanced security protocols throughout our solar system." What the public didn't know was that Enhanced Security Protocols was the code phrase for Operation Silent Shield, the covert activation of Earth's hidden defensive measures. In orbit around Mars, Neptune, and dozens of other positions throughout the solar system, small satellites that had appeared dormant suddenly came online. Their signals, undetectable by Senate technology, created a network that monitored every move of the Senate fleet. On the Senate flagship, Admiral Kurzeth received a message from Senate High Command. The demonstration was effective, it read. Intelligence indicates human resistance is weakening. Public opinion has shifted toward acceptance of Senate protection. Continue pressure tactics. Full compliance expected within 30 days. Kurzeth smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. He had done this before. A show of force, followed by apologies and compensation. It always worked. Species learned that resistance brought pain, while compliance brought safety. Begin jamming their long-range communications, he ordered. I want them isolated and afraid. What he didn't realize was that deep beneath the lunar surface, Earth's real communications network remained untouched, carrying messages that would soon change everything. The grand chambers of the Galactic Senate buzzed with excitement. Representatives from all member species had gathered for what many believed would be Earth's formal surrender. 3 weeks had passed since the accident at Europa, and Senate intelligence reported that human resistance was crumbling. Ambassador Peter Calloway walked calmly through the central aisle, his steps measured and unhurried. Behind him followed a small team of human diplomats and advisors. Many Senate representatives whispered as they passed. Some looked smug, others merely curious. Grand Counselor Vex Moore floated at the central podium, its particle form glowing with bright colors that signaled satisfaction. The Senate recognizes Ambassador Calloway of Earth, it announced. You have requested this emergency session. The Senate is pleased by your prompt response to recent events. Calloway took his place at the speaker's platform. His face betrayed no emotion as he looked around the vast chamber. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds watched him expectantly. Thank you, Grand Counselor, Calloway began, his voice steady. Earth requested this session because we believe clear communication is essential between allies. He paused, noting how several Senate elders leaned forward expectantly. For 5 years, humanity has participated in good faith within the galactic community. We have followed Senate protocols, shared our culture, and engaged in trade. We believed we were joining a community of equals. Murmurs spread through the chamber. This was not the tone of surrender many had expected. Recent events have forced us to reevaluate our understanding, Calloway continued. The deaths of 47 scientists on Europa was not an accident. It was a demonstration. A show of force meant to intimidate Earth into accepting a status we cannot and will not accept. Vex Moore's glow darkened with agitation. Ambassador, these accusations are based on evidence, Calloway interrupted, something rarely done in Senate proceedings. He tapped a control on his wrist, and a holographic display appeared above the chamber. The display showed real-time footage of every Senate vessel currently in Earth's solar system. As the Senate representatives watched, a shimmering energy field suddenly appeared around each ship. The fields glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed gently. Shocked gasps and cries echoed throughout the chamber. These are not weapons, Calloway explained calmly. They are simply containment fields. Your ships are unharmed, but they cannot move, communicate, or power their weapons until we deactivate these fields. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some representatives shouted accusations, others demands. Many simply stared in disbelief. Admiral Corzeth's face appeared on a communication screen, his scales flushed with rage. What have you done? He demanded. My ships report complete power failures. Not power failures, Calloway replied. Power containment. Your ships have full power, but the energy cannot pass through our fields. Vex Moore's particle form swirled with angry patterns. This is an act of war against the Senate. Release our vessels immediately. Calloway shook his head. This is not war. This is a demonstration, much like the one you gave us on Europa. He tapped his control again, and the holographic display expanded and changed. Now it showed similar energy fields appearing around key Senate military installations across 12 star systems, installations whose locations were supposed to be unknown to humanity. The Senate chamber fell completely silent. Humanity has no interest in war, Calloway said into the silence. We have no desire for conquest or dominance, but neither will we be subjugated. From his seat in the chamber, Daniel Harris watched with careful satisfaction. Months of building relationships with smaller Senate species had paid off. Many of them now looked more intrigued than alarmed by Earth's display of power. Calloway continued, his voice firm but not threatening. We know about Protocol 7A. We know what you've done to other species who resisted Senate control. Today, we demonstrate that such methods will not work on humanity." He looked directly at Vexamore. "The containment fields will be deactivated when our ships receive confirmation that the Senate fleet is departing our solar system. Once they have left, we will present our counterproposal." Vexamore's glow pulsed with anger. "You have no right to make demands of the Senate." "We have every right," Calloway replied simply. "The right of a sovereign species to determine its own fate." He gestured to the holographic display still showing contained Senate ships and installations. "And as you can see, we have the means to ensure that right is respected." Chaos reigned in the Senate chambers for nearly an hour. Species that had existed in peace for centuries faced something they had never expected. A newcomer species that had turned their own tactics against them. Security forces surrounded Calloway and the human delegation, but made no move to detain them. The demonstration of Earth's power had made everyone cautious. Eventually, a group of elder species called for order. The 7 oldest members of the Senate gathered in their special seating area, conferring in urgent whispers. Finally, the eldest of all, Katoran of the Ashanti, a being said to be over 900 years old, raised a gnarled hand for silence. "Ambassador Calloway," Katoran said, his voice surprisingly strong despite his ancient appearance, "the Senate demands an explanation. How has Earth accomplished this? And what are your terms?" Calloway nodded respectfully to the elder. "I will answer both questions, but first, I would like to introduce someone." He gestured, and a woman stepped forward from the human delegation. "This is Dr. Nicole Wright, Chief Archaeologist of Earth's Deep Space Initiative." Dr. Wright was a small woman with dark skin and keen eyes. She carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had made significant discoveries. "Esteemed representatives," she began, "3 years ago, my team discovered ruins on an unnamed moon in the Proxima Centauri system. These ruins contain technology far beyond anything we had seen, even beyond what the Senate has shared with us." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The elder species shifted uncomfortably. "The technology came from a civilization you call the predecessors," Dr. Wright continued. "According to our research, they vanished over 20,000 years ago. What's most interesting is that we found evidence this technology had been deliberately buried and hidden." Torrent's face remained impassive, but his hands gripped his seat tightly. "At first, we couldn't understand why such valuable technology would be hidden," Dr. Wright said. "Then we decoded the records left behind. The predecessors feared that their most powerful technologies would be misused. They created a test, a signature in the technology that would only respond to species who met certain criteria." Calloway stepped forward again. "We believe the criteria included innovation, adaptability, and a balance between cooperation and independence. Humanity passed this test. The technology responded to us." "Impossible," shouted a representative from one of the elder species. "We have studied predecessor technology for thousands of years." "Yes," Calloway replied calmly. "And according to records we found, you deliberately suppressed certain discoveries to maintain your advantage over younger species. The containment fields we demonstrated today were developed by reverse engineering predecessor technology that was meant to be shared, not hoarded." The elder species representatives conferred again, their expressions grave. Finally, Torrin spoke. "What you have done is still an act of aggression against the Senate. The consequences." "The consequences," Calloway interrupted, his voice sharper now. "Let's talk about consequences. You tried to measure humanity by the standards of your history. That was your mistake. We've spent thousands of years fighting ourselves. We've become experts at identifying threats." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from younger species who had long been dominated by the elders. "You expected us to follow the same pattern as other species you've subjugated. But humans adapt. When we realized what was happening, we didn't just prepare to fight. We analyzed your entire power structure. We found your hidden installations. We built technology you thought impossible. And we did it all in 5 years. The silence in the chamber was complete. Even the most vocal opponents had no response. Our terms are simple, Calloway continued. First, the Senate fleet leaves Earth's solar system immediately. Second, the Prosperity Proposal is withdrawn permanently. Third, Earth will present a new treaty that acknowledges our right to maintain our defense forces while establishing genuine security cooperation. He paused, looking directly at the elder species. And finally, the Senate will form a commission to review how predecessor technology has been handled, with representatives from all species, not just the elders. One of the younger Senate representatives, a being from a species called the Novan that had joined just before humanity, stood up. I support the human proposal, it said boldly. Many of us have suspected the elders of withholding technology. If humans found a way to access it in 5 years, what does that say about the Senate's true purpose? Others began to stand as well. The balance of power that had existed for millennia was shifting before their eyes. 1 year after the dramatic confrontation in the Senate chambers, the galaxy had changed in ways few had imagined possible. The massive Senate hall still hosted representatives from hundreds of worlds, but the atmosphere was different. Younger species spoke freely now, their voices carrying equal weight to the elders who had dominated for so long. Admiral Gary Peterson stood on the observation deck of the Earth vessel Unity, watching as ships from 20 different species maneuvered in formation around Jupiter. As commander of the newly formed Joint Security Task Force, he oversaw the combined fleet that now patrolled not just Earth's solar system, but helped protect the territories of smaller Senate members as well. Impressive sight, isn't it? Asked Trelvox, a blue-skinned representative from the Axoni people. A year ago, my species would never have imagined serving alongside humans as equals. Peterson nodded. Change can happen quickly when it needs to. The revised treaty between Earth and the Galactic Senate had become a model for a new kind of cooperation. Earth maintained its defense forces while sharing certain technologies with trusted allies. In return, those allies provided resources and knowledge that helped humanity advance even further. On Mars, Kyle Jackson's shield technology had been adapted to protect settlements across the galaxy from natural disasters and space debris. What had begun as a weapon had found greater purpose as a tool for safety. In Geneva, the United Earth Council was in session, with President Miller addressing the assembly via hologram from the new Senate Cooperative Center on the Moon. The path forward is neither domination nor submission, she told the gathered leaders. In just 1 year, we have proven that genuine partnership benefits everyone. 27 species now participate in our shared research initiatives. Trade has increased by 300%. And most importantly, no species faces the threat of forced disarmament. Not everyone had embraced the new order. Several elder species had withdrawn from active Senate participation, retreating to their core worlds. But even they could not ignore the shift in power dynamics. In a private chamber near the Senate Hall, Senate historian Cricksell carefully recorded the events of the past year. His 6-fingered hands moved gracefully over the input panel as he dictated his observations. The human response represented something unprecedented in Senate history, he noted. Not merely military ingenuity, but a perfect blend of strategic patience, technological innovation, and diplomatic finesse. They understood that true security comes not from overwhelming force, but from building a network of mutual interests. He paused, considering his next words carefully. Perhaps most remarkable was humanity's restraint. With the power they demonstrated, they could have demanded far more. Instead, they sought only equality and genuine cooperation. This suggests a wisdom our eldest members failed to recognize. In a research facility on one of Jupiter's moons, Daniel Harris met with representatives from 12 species. All were younger Senate members who had joined the cooperative partnership with Earth. The predecessor archives continue to yield new discoveries, Harris told the group. Working together, we've unlocked data storage systems that had remained sealed for 20,000 years. A representative from the Novan species leaned forward eagerly. and the technology responds to all of us now. Harris nodded. Once the suppression protocols were removed, the systems recognized all our species as worthy successors. The predecessors never intended their knowledge to be hoarded by a few. Far beyond the edges of explored space, something ancient and hostile stirred. The Void Swarm, a collective intelligence that had clashed with the predecessors before their disappearance, had detected new energy signatures matching their old enemies. After 20,000 years of dormancy, the swarm began to move toward civilized space once more. In the Senate Hall, a lone sensor detected the first faint traces of the approaching threat. 5 years ago, the divided Senate would have been unprepared for such a danger. But now, with humanity as equal partners and the younger species empowered, the reformed galactic community stood unified. Admiral Peterson received the alert while still on the observation deck. He read the data twice, then looked up at the stars. "Alert all task force commanders," he said to his communications officer, "and send word to Earth. We may face our greatest challenge yet." As ships from 20 worlds moved into defensive positions, Peterson felt a strange sense of calm. Whatever was coming, they would face it together, not as rulers and subjects, but as allies who had learned that true strength came from cooperation, not control.